In your opinion, what are the most important things that we are failing to teach people that we want to be healthy, happy members of society?
Yeah, good question. So in my view, it is about the pursuit of knowing yourself. And I use those words pretty intentionally because it's not about the destination, because as the world moves and we have different experiences in the world, you are constantly changing in micro ways back and forth, but also fundamentally there are life things that happen that will change us. But I think the thing that we're not really focusing on in terms of what matters is this journey of knowing yourself and just being honest with yourself about who are you really. There's who were you before, there's who are you now, there's who you might want to be in the future. But that to me is all about the pursuit of self-discovery. And I think everything stems from there. Whatever you decide to do, the impact you want to make, how you make certain decisions is really all about not the end destination of I now know myself, but the consistent pursuit and curiosity around that.
This know thyself painted over the oracle.
Yes.
80 degrees. Give us the background of that. What's your interest in all of that?
Yeah, so I think growing up as, British-born Ghanaian, African upbringing, some people will know what that means, but quite strict upbringing sometimes. A lot of don't do this, do that, this is right, this is wrong. I noticed as I was growing up that I learned that actually some of the decisions that I would make for myself were actually more aligned with who I was at the time versus the societal pressure that might have come with some of those reasons to not make some decisions. Silly example, I wanted to go to university, but I didn't want to go to university in London. The coaching I received was go to university in London, stay at home, save some money, etc., etc. But when I thought about it, I was thinking, well, I want to develop as a person. I think I will develop more if I am not in the environment that I know so well. So I ended up effectively defying that parental guidance, let's say, to make some of those decisions. And I started to feel like, that was the right thing to do. So as I started to make more decisions aligned with who I felt I was, and then when I started to feel emotional about a certain situation or actually, quit a job here and there, I felt like, actually, this is all about self-discovery. It's all about who am I? Who do I think I am? And understanding that there are positive and negative consequences to a lot of things, but ultimately having the confidence that whatever I decide to do will be the best thing for me. And I started to build that confidence. I started to make more and more decisions. And I feel like that's made me, as a founder of a business, fundamentally need to be a little bit delusional, but there's that delusional confidence. And I think a lot of that has come from making decisions aligned with my own values.
At what point did you start getting interested in things like stoicism? And what even is that for the people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so stoicism, I'm sure I'm not going to have the perfect definition, but stoicism is really thinking about, all right, what's the worst case scenario? And I will be okay in that situation and I will be able to deal with the situation in itself and having that confidence in growth there. I think and I ended up going a little bit too far. I would say, I think with everything, there's a spectrum. But I really started to get interested I had like a really bad breakup at one point. And I was really trying to think, why am I struggling so much with this situation? Obviously there's emotions involved and things like that, but why am I really struggling with this situation? And I started to read a little bit more about how you deal with hardship and different ways in which to do that. And for me, for whatever reason, I gravitated to stoicism and understanding myself and different techniques to kind of help me navigate difficult situations. But that interest was really around how do I be a better version of myself as a result of having this kind of test in my life. I do believe we experience these tests in life. So how do I learn from it and how do I become better as a result? How do I do things differently this time around versus how it was done before, knowing who I am now? So I think that interest just came from, like, I just love learning. I think, again, that pursuit of learning, and I do like to just, like, sometimes I play computer games. I like to play on the most difficult level because I enjoy the challenge of becoming better and improving. So I didn't know that's where it came from.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the show, or back to the show for those of you who aren't new here. Getting lots of new faces these days, and so I just wanted to take a quick sec to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Seven, and also to give you a quick announcement. As a little bit of background, this show used to be very focused on what it meant to be a leader, but I quickly realized I already had my answer, which is that I believe you already are one. And it's just about becoming more of that person you want to be. So we're talking about the world, self-leadership, personal development, humanity, discovery, self-discovery, and so much more. This is a place where deep conversations happen in a way that helps you become more of that person you want to be. And so if you appreciate that and you want to help us grow, but I know you're tired of people hearing, we've been hearing this for over a decade, like and subscribe and share the episode, and I get it, but look, it is genuinely the biggest and best thing that you can do. I don't play ads or any crap like that. I do this and take this time to say thank you because I appreciate you and where this show is going. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Lots of love, and let's get on with the episode. I think it's a Marcus Aurelius quote that comes to mind, which is, I'm going to butcher a little bit, but it's essentially, does an emerald doubt its value?
Yeah, interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is when we were talking off camera about resilience.
Yeah.
Before we started recording. And there's this self-doubt that we all have within us. We could be this emerald when we are these diamonds, these beautiful beings that so deeply doubt our own intrinsic worth, beauty, insert other word here, that we then no longer act like that which we are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a resilience required to keep going through the challenges that are going to push you into being that. We're seeing a lot of that in the world right now. What's your take on resilience and how we deal with all the garbage that gets thrown at us?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to this idea of self-identification, self-understanding, but also how do you build, like the question is, how do you build resilience, right? First of all, do you believe it? Does someone as an individual believe it to be an important thing? And then how do you go about building it? And the reason I think it's important to have it as a focus is we don't know the future. We literally don't know what's going to happen. So feeling like we are ready for difficult situations can actually create a level of confidence that allows us to move in the world in a certain way. That means we're more likely to get what we want. That's my view. So that's why I think it's an important thing. In terms of my view on it, especially in today's world, I think there's too much focus on what people want and not what they can be prepared for. And I think both can work in tandem. Like you can want something and be prepared for it. But I think there's a lot of, oh, I want this, but there's not a lot of reflection as into why do I want certain things and how can I be prepared for if I actually on that journey, and how I get it. So it's just been so vital to my journey. Again, as an entrepreneur, I remember one of my mentors said to me, 50% of the battle is staying in the fight, basically, like just staying in it. And resilience is just a huge part of that. And I would implore, anyone to really think about building that as a muscle, because I do believe it can be built. I don't believe resilient is only for a certain number of people. It can be built even intentionally. That's what I would say.
Is there anyone who you think doesn't care about resilience? Do you think you said that we need to value it, want it, but do you think there's anyone doesn't value it, or maybe is it just we don't act like it?
I think it could be both. I do think there are people who don't think about it. Mm-hmm. They don't think about the importance of it. They don't really think about, how this skill, because I believe it's a skill that can be acquired, how can this skill benefit me? How can it benefit the people around me? How can it benefit society? Like just on an individual basis, myself being resilient in a certain, in a difficult world, difficult circumstances, how can that be helpful? I think most people, I don't know, yeah, I feel like most people aren't focused. What do you think? What's your view?
If I were to get knocked down by life, do I get back up again or not? And if the answer is no, then I'm not resilient. But is that because I don't have resilience?
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm not sure a lot of people are actively thinking about the word resilience.
That's what I've seen as well. Exactly.
And the process behind it. You tend to find the people that have the most of that are people like yourself who are serial entrepreneurs. They keep going through challenging times and continue with challenging games that are maybe unreasonable. Other people don't appreciate or always want to play, or especially somewhere like here in the UK, which can be very kind of put down and judgmental as a culture.
Yeah.
I have entrepreneur friends that will very clearly tell the story of like, I don't know, maybe their business is now a 7-figure business or something. And they go to a party with friends who they haven't seen in a while. And they're like, oh, Mr. Millionaire is like gracing us with his presence. And we're like, okay, so you don't understand how damaging is it. But what you're describing is someone who was unconsciously resilient versus people who were unconsciously either less excited, less motivated, or less resilient, or some combination of that. But are we labeling that as resilience? I think there's something interesting you mentioned, though, about the kind of past us, current us, and future us.
Yeah.
If I consciously decide I want greater resilience and want to fight battles that no one really wants to fight. Someone was just telling me that I've recorded with the other day about this children's story where they're going on a bear hunt.
Interesting.
I'm just going to retell the story.
The start of a story.
So it's a children's book.
Yeah.
They're going on a bear hunt. They come to some tall grass. Can we go under it or over it? No, we have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
And you're probably going to get knocked over because you can't see where you're going. If you get back up, that's resilience. Do you choose to go through it? That's not just resilience, but resilience is part of it. Yeah. We get through a muddy swamp. We have to walk through it. There's no other option. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. We reach the bear. The bear chases us. We have to run away. These are all, it's not just, there's a number of components. Resilience is a core one of them that I just don't think we live with. Actively, we kind of are it or we aren't it. And then we accept that we aren't it if we think we aren't it. That is a narrative.
Yes.
So when you talk about past, present, future, I'm also thinking those are narratives. What's the narrative of my past? What's the narrative I'm going to live in my future?
Correct.
And if I'm not living a narrative of resilience, then what am I living a narrative of? Someone flimsy, someone who doesn't stick to their word. That's maybe a little bit too harsh, but I think what I'm getting to here is, resilience is not something we actively think about. Then my question for you becomes, okay, what do you think happens when we don't actively think about it, right? Because I don't want to get too harsh about describing different archetypes of people. That's too prescriptive. But, what's your perspective on what someone who actively thinks about resilience maybe builds and maybe what someone who doesn't do that creates?
Yeah. So I think what you create is a level of confidence in an uncertain future. And I think wherever your views are on political climates, social climates right now, cost of living being out of control in a lot of places around the world. In my view, if someone who decides to focus on it, they have more control in the desired outcome in difficult situations. There's this whole idea of, do you let life happen to you or do you move your way through life? And I think resilience is the core of that.
Okay.
If you actively decide to even, one of my favorite quotes is from Denzel Washington in a speech, and he says, ease is the biggest threat to progress. And the idea of how sometimes going through the difficult situation is what allows you to build that confidence in that future. So I think if you're actively thinking about it, you're preparing yourself naturally in terms of uncertainty, but you're also giving yourself the confidence that you will get through it, and you're taking control of your destiny as much as you can with regards to a situation. And what it means is, especially with my journey, it's I'm willing to try, but I recognize that try to achieve my goals, but I recognize resilience is required, but it's not the only thing that's needed to achieve my goals, but I am more likely to achieve those things if I have them. Versus someone who's not thinking about it or is like actively, okay, I'm not resilient, so I'm just going to go through life in that way. I think it makes it harder to get the things that you want in life. And even because I think even the idea of not wanting the things that you want in life and accepting it, I think can lead to a lot of difficult times as a result. And I'm just a big proponent of the mental game and the physical game, like mental resilience and physical resilience. We talk a lot about gym, eat healthy, more prevalent, all these things. Mental health is a lot more talked about now, but the actual practical idea of building mental muscles, I think, is not talked about enough. And I think that's what's helped me navigate a lot of difficult situations as well.
So what I'm now really interested in is, okay, when we say mental muscles, what exactly are we talking about? What you described earlier is almost this internal locus of control as opposed to an external, right? So yeah. I am my own creator. I am the actor. I am the center of my creation in this world. Or am I living in survival mode where the things that are external to me influence me? Yeah. This person says this thing, I move this way. Yeah. That event happens, I move that way. Mm-hmm. And I'm constantly being pulled. It's sort of driven or dragged, right? Is an example. So resilience is a core part of this. But if we're now talking, if what we're actually talking about is how do you build an internal locus of control? Yeah. What are the core components that are those mental muscles or those internal or even emotional muscles that create a self-driven internal locus of control, healthy, strong internal locus of control?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've been trying to figure out what these parts are myself from like a more practical standpoint, and I started to think about that. So some of the things that align are, for example, firstly, recognizing that you're going to need help. Regardless of what type of help that is, the likelihood of you being able to get that internal sense of control is unlikely to come from you alone. It's going to be about your environment. It's going to be about the people around you. It's going to be about the books you read, all of those kind of things. So there's even a step to just recognize that I'm not going to be able to go through this alone. I'm going to need some help. For me, a few years ago, I had this triumvirate of a mentor, a coach, and a therapist. And those were the people, that kind of helped me understand that. But on the basis that if I was to start out, I wouldn't be able to afford a coach. In that respect, it started for me with books like Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, or books like The Alchemist, or books like The Chimp Paradox. They really helped me start to understand, okay, I accept I need help in this desire to build this resilience when I had difficult personal situations. So let me get some help from somewhere. I then also think, going back to the point around environment and how you build this resilience, there are people that are in my view, there are people that are for you, there are people that are passive, and there are people that are against you. And there's a harsh reckoning, I think, in that you are likely to have to remove certain people from your life if they are the types of people that are not invested in your journey of getting this sense of control. I remember when I was much younger and I realized actually, for example, quitting my job to start my first business. I was on the very strong corporate ladder. I was a very young leader in the organization. And I decided to leave a job that I was paid more than my dad at the time, living in his house. Crazy to leave. I was working for CEO of one of the biggest companies in the UK and Asia. And I said, I'm going to quit my job and start a music startup. And there are people that are for that decision. There are people that are passive, and there are people that are against that. And what I've noticed, a lot of people who are against these kind of decisions are imposing their own insecurities
Yes.
on yourself.
They know they wouldn't have had the courage to do it.
Correct. Exactly. And then you start to feel those things and you start to realize, if I continue with these people in my life, I'm serious about this pursuit of, knowing myself and achieving certain goals, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions on that journey. It's like everything has a cost in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And in that respect, from a practical perspective, I think that cost is assessing who is around you. And there are people who can challenge you, fair enough. As I said, you need help along this journey. But then there are people who just aren't useful in that pursuit going forward. And you either, there are different practical ways to do it. I'm not going to say there's a right way or wrong way. For me, it was having the conversation really upfront and being like, it's been great. A bit like a breakup, it's been great, but I'm going in this direction. And I don't think this is healthy for me right now, and hope you can respect that decision.
That's a really healthy way to have that conversation, which most people don't do. They kind of let things peter out, or, there are sometimes even just friend breakups that need to happen. Yes, like, I love you, but every time I see you, you're being negative for no reason, bringing me down. Can we please, work on this? Otherwise, I still love you, but this just isn't going to work. I have love for you, but this isn't going to work. And it does start to sound like a breakup. But that is kind of what it could be. I think it's important to acknowledge very briefly, as like a small tangent, why people, as you described it, impose those insecurities on other people. Because probably everyone listening, including you and I, have done this to some extent at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
And statistically, it's like almost impossible we don't to some extent do it at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to sound judgmental. I think it's important to understand why we do this. Sometimes it's, I don't want you to do this thing because I will, my ego doesn't like it, right? I've had people in my life where it's like, it should have encouraged you but didn't, because if you're successful, their ego would be hurt. That can happen sometimes, especially I think from parents.
Yeah.
But I think maybe more often than that, and maybe more common, is some people's empathy isn't very good, and it's their emotional intelligence therefore isn't very good. They don't quite realize it. Emotional intelligence isn't just, do I understand why you feel bad right now? Although that is a part of it, or good, or whatever. That's a part of it, but that's not only that. It's also to fully embody that we are different people, right? So I'm thinking about if I'm thinking about you going off and starting a startup, I'm not thinking about you doing it. I'm thinking about, if I was in your position, would I be able to do it?
Right.
Because I'm not able to separate the two. Yeah. And so my unconscious brain almost goes into your body and as pretends it's you, and goes, if I play this out, and it wouldn't work. Yeah. But it's like, it wouldn't work for that person, not for the person in question, which is you. And so I don't know what your thoughts are on any of that, but to me, it's like, if anyone is experiencing that from someone else, or is noticing they're doing it too, to almost remove yourself from that position, take that deep breath and go, this isn't about me. Let's try as objectively as possible to judge or to analyze this person and what they need help with.
Yes.
If someone doesn't do that, you get like what you described, parents who always ask unhelpful questions, partners who don't want to support you, and frankly, you'd have to break up with them because this, again, sounds like a tangent, but I think it's really important. There was a video I saw of one of these young American millionaires, super grind, hustle culture, whatever, somehow got to interview lots of billionaires and asked every single one of them, what's the number one thing that got you towards success? Most of them are older men. So almost all of them say the same thing. And because most of them are men, what they're saying is usually, my wife.
Right.
Find the right wife.
Right.
Basically find the right partner.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's either your number one supporter or your number one kind of detractor. Exactly.
Yeah.
Are they constantly encouraging you? Are they able and willing and happy, or at least even willing to have the conversation about, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to contribute to the bills very much for a bit, but here's my plan. I'm going to keep you updated. That has such a huge impact. I've gone into a couple of tangents. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. So I think about the people potentially projecting some of these insecurities. I think you can start to tell from the language that they are saying, whether it's a confusion around why certain decisions are made, or they're not clear in their reason for this kind of feeling of something's not right. And I think you're right, it's down to emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is a very difficult skill to acquire. But I think one of the ways to determine whether it's an insecurity or it is actually care, like it's literally just care, is the language that they use. Like, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through this? Are you sure about this? You know, some of that language is sometimes seen as more on the detractor side versus other language, which is, okay, that's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about where that came from?
Which is much more internal locus of control, not being thrown off course by what someone else said.
Correct, exactly. And I think what's really important as well is you can have the feeling. We are human beings. We've had experiences in our lives that do have an effect on us, but it's whether that feeling is externalized to the point where it isn't productive. And I think that's the key. And yeah, with regards to this idea of like what these millionaires said, etc., with regards to the decisions that they made, I think it's also important to, like, similar going back to what I said, like, you can't go through it alone. You can't always go through it alone, but there's different ways there's not one way to execute either. And I'm going through a period right now where I'm about to start with a new therapist because I'm on a journey where my ambition has grown to what it was before. It's grown. I didn't think it would grow, but it has. And I'm preparing myself for what that journey might look like, and recognizing that I have my own friends, family, personal situations, and how do I respect the desire to keep those relationships and value them in alignment with my values and where I want to go. So as much as those millionaires have said, you know, it's about that, we're in a different world now, is what I assume. You know, if they're mostly older men, what the world looks like now looked very different. There were things that, you know, they could probably get away with, let's say, like not changing a nappy, for example, or anything, stuff like that, you know, it's important to have that kind of familial structure, which is a masculine, feminine, however you determine your relationship. So I think it's interesting to understand how that would happen now. What suite of relationships, tools, you know, outside mechanisms. I've been really into like the laws of the universe at the moment, and how those can be harnessed to help you affect your outcomes as well. So yeah, it's just a really, really interesting time. And I'm still on that pursuit, and I'm realizing that there's a jump going to happen soon in myself, and I'm excited to explore that as well.
What was that like emotionally to recognize that your ambition had grown?
Yeah, it was a bit weird, to be honest. I can't pinpoint the time it happened, but I think it was overwhelm. It was like fear. That's the closest feeling I can bring it to. And I think it was because I have this, I don't know if it's my toxic trait, but, you know, I have this thing of always a need to fulfill my potential. I don't actually know really. I can't pinpoint what my potential is. But by the virtue of achieving something, it means I haven't gone far enough to recognize to achieving my potential. So I always move the goalpost. It's just a natural thing that I do. And I think there's been this movement of goalposts, but it's been the biggest jump in terms of financial outcome, impact on people, people I want to help in the world, all of these kind of things. And I think I had this feeling of overwhelm of just, okay, that's big. That's bigger than I thought. And I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it's partly that when you care about something, normally you get a bit anxious somewhere, you know, and it just means like, okay, I care. I don't want to mess this up. I have people that, you know, for example, my parents who I want to support, you know, in family in villages back in Ghana that I want to be able to support. My mum is a build a well in the village so they can have clean water? Can I, through the financial things that I do, contribute to that? And I have really wide goals for that. But the feeling was overwhelmed and a bit scared.
So, and what pushed you into that? So help me understand, when you say you're overwhelmed and you felt this fear, you noticed you had more ambition than you originally thought, and that scared you.
I think what scared me was the fact that I'm actually going to go on this journey.
Oh, so you were like, no matter what, this journey is going to happen. Like, oh shit, this journey is more deep than I thought.
Yeah. Like basically having seen, I'm perceiving it because I haven't been through it, but having seen what certain people have done that I respect in the business world, philanthropic world, and what they have achieved and how difficult it has been, and some of the things they've said to me personally about some of the challenges they've had. I think all in that one moment, it was, I might be on the journey of experiencing some of these things. And the fear was kind of accepting it. Like, I'm accepting that I'm going to go through it and I'm going to try my best to do it. But I think also there was a little bit of a feeling of, what does that mean for the people that I have in my life today? Like, what does that mean for them practically? And I think it was just a bit of a move back of, okay, this is going to happen. This, life is going to change. But I think that's also happened because I have the belief that I'm going to do it as well. I think that's also part of it. So it's kind of recognizing that I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I believe I am. And therefore, as a result, I believe the things that come with that success from a sacrificial point of view are going to happen as well. And I think it all just came at the same time.
How did you deal with that fear and overwhelm?
I don't think I've dealt with it yet.
That's why you're switching therapy.
Exactly. I don't think I've dealt with it yet. And I think I'm definitely on that journey of doing that. But I'm very excited about it as well. Like, I'm really excited about what it means to potentially impact millions of people positively, if that is able to materialize. And yeah, like it makes me happy thinking about what that world might look like as well.
I love it. To go back to this question then about the process for creating your own internal locus of control, or becoming your own internal locus of control. So I got a few things out of this so far. Number one, accepts that you need help.
Yeah.
Number two, build a stronger environment.
Yes.
I added number three, which was build courage. And that was so we could do number four, which you mentioned, which is do the courageous things so you can build resilience.
Yes. Yeah.
What else? What do you think about that? And B, what else?
Yeah, so the courage thing is really interesting because, what do I think? I think that sometimes it makes sense to take the easy route. And I think that's the difficulty sometimes with this, because resilience is an outcome of or almost going through a difficult thing a lot of the time. Like, if you think about things in a specific way, you can always see the positive of a difficult thing if it provides that strength. But it doesn't mean that just pick all the difficult routes that you can go through, because it doesn't naturally make sense. So I think there's a little bit about, one of my mentors used to say, you kind of need to experience these things to build the courage. Like, you just need to. But they should also be things that tend to be on your path, or things that align with where you want to go, rather than go right around, the way because it's something difficult and you want to build resilience. I think it's a difficult balance, but I think that's important. But I think courage is key. And courage, in the modern world, I guess in the olden world, it was more like physical courage. I don't know, stand in front of a lion or something, take, be able to fight it or whatever. But I think now it's really about, for me as a man in navigating the world, it's like, what does it mean to be masculine as a man? Like, is it, initially overreacting to a situation and ending up in a physical altercation? Or is it thinking about, okay, what's the desired outcome here? Who do I need to, I do like the idea of protecting and providing. Like, who am I protecting? Who am I providing for? And making sure they get what they need in that respect. So the reason I say that is because I think it's the courage is also about acceptance. Courage isn't just physical situations that people think often, like Ninja Warrior or something. Like it's really courageous to jump off a crazy building, but actually building the courage to be yourself and also navigate the world in that way too. But after courage, I would say, resilience, courage, confidence. I don't know how it fits in, but maybe these are an outcome of those things. But,
I have an answer for that.
Go on.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So this is actually what I did my TEDx talk on.
Okay.
Which was, I think there are 3 big manifestations of fear.
Okay.
Restlessness, reactivity, and resistance.
Okay.
Specifically resistance to change. Without going too deeply into it, when we're afraid, something will go on in our body, right? Our brain will get restless. That's kind of anxiety, right? Reactivity is supposed to be proactive, and that internal locus of control, we're reactive. Whatever happens, we react to it. And resistance, we're either resisting change or challenges that would push us to change. And these things create the personality that we are, and our personality creates our personal reality, as Joe Dispenza likes to say. So personality isn't this magical thing you have, it's how you show up. And if you choose to show up a different way, your personality starts to shift, at least as far as everyone else sees. And that creates your whole destiny. And so fate is a thing and also entirely in our control. This is kind of a reframing on that. And so fear leads us to those 3 things. So my question then becomes, what do we do about them?
Right.
And my answer is what I lovingly call the 3 C's. So 1 for each of those 3 R's. Calm, confidence, and courage.
Okay.
Now to answer your question, so calm is essentially peace, but to answer your kind of thought around courage and confidence, one can feel really unconfident and still do something courageous.
True.
That's something an earlier podcast guest of mine said, and I was like, that's
gold. Yeah.
That's so powerful. So courage is the action, is the verb almost, and confidence is the feeling. And so what I would say is you've got to cultivate both, and they are separate things that can work in parallel, right? Reactivity, courage can help overcome this reactivity by being like, how can I courageously do the proactive thing or do it anyway? No, sorry, that's resisted. And confidence is helping with that reactivity. And so can you cultivate both the feeling, the mindset, the emotionality, and the willingness to do the action that you don't want to do anyway? One is the noun, one is the verb.
Nice. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I actually had a follow-up kind of question on that, because what's your view on like people's propensity or capacity for the difficult? Do you know what I mean? So what I mean is there are 2 individual people that may have, in this case, an example, very specific situation happened to both of them, but one person would say is less resilient in their mind, let's say, and another more so. Do you believe that there are people who have higher or lower propensity to be able to absorb these kind of parts, and could actually be dangerous or difficult to talk about people going through difficult situations when they may be less suited to that?
So I would split it up into, if I understood correctly, I split it up into your capacity right now and your potentiality eventually at any point.
Got it. Sure. Nice. Yeah.
So there's something I love, which is, let's imagine I had a bucket, right?
Okay.
And there's a 10 out of 10, that bucket is fully full. 0 out of 10, the bucket's empty. And currently, my bucket is at an 8 out of 10. That 8 out of 10 is my current capacity, my energy levels, my whatever. What is my capacity right now? What do you think?
Oh, the question. Oh, sorry.
What's my capacity at that moment where I'm at 8 out of 10?
8.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Most people go 10 because it's like the bucket can always get filled, and it's like that's potential. But my capacity, right? Well, capacity is actually an unhelpful word in this sentence. My reserves right now are the 8. The most I can give you right now is the 8 out of 10.
Correct.
So I'm not a potential 10 out of 10. I'm a 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
And it is over time through doing something to put something in that bucket that something changes. Now, there's a saying that I love, and I heard recently that I cannot quote where it comes from because I just don't remember, but I'm stealing anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll say, are you a glass half full or are you a glass half empty?
Yeah.
And I love this forever, and I think you'll really appreciate this. Instead of being the glass or the water, be the tap.
Okay, nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose to fill buckets, including my own, as much as possible.
Yeah.
So to come back to answer your question, my current ability, there are folks who their current ability, you cannot push them too far because if I try to go up to that 9 or 10 out of 10, actually there's a hole at 8 and it just leaks out.
Yeah.
Folks like myself who do a lot of work with people, folks like your therapist, for example, right, and coaches who are in a position of essentially being the healers of our modern day society, you can screw someone up by trying to give someone something they're not ready for.
Agreed.
Best case scenario, for example, I gave a friend of mine a book that I think is really transformative and powerful, but she was not ready to fully understand it, and so she just rejected. She read through, it was like, I disagree, and it was like, you haven't read it.
Right.
But that was on me.
Right.
She wasn't ready to fully absorb it. To me, it felt like she just didn't read it, but she did. She just wasn't ready to fully understand things. And I was like this for a long time. But I had to get slowly built up with certain books, certain bits of wisdom, certain mentors, whatever, slowly explaining things.
Yeah.
This is why sometimes it feels like you're talking to a brick wall when you say certain things to certain people.
Yeah.
It isn't that they're fault or that they can't eventually grow into it. In this moment, their capacity is only so much. And worst case, that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you screw someone up.
Yeah.
You make them hate the thing, reject the thing, confuse them, send them into depression. You need to be really careful as a healer. The same way a doctor needs to be careful about prescribing the wrong medication. Right? So that's in the now.
Yeah.
In the time, over time, I really do believe in people's potential and capacity to improve. Some people's potential, however, is not going to look the same as other people's potential. So a story I love to tell, and this is a true story. It's not going to sound real, but I promise this is a true story. I was once sitting with a shaman under a tree.
That's already love the start of it.
I warned you. I couldn't sound real.
Yeah.
Sitting with a shaman under a tree, and he motions up to this big tree that we're sitting underneath. We're in this beautiful forest that was quite dry. It had burned down about 30 years previous. In a kind of wildfire, had regrown since then. We're sitting under, one of the biggest trees in this area. He motions up to this big tree and he goes, imagine this tree was an orange tree. And over there was the sapling for a little baby apple tree. And the apple tree looked up at the orange tree and said, I want to be just like that orange tree, big and strong and producing the best oranges. And it does grow up to be really big and strong, but it's an apple tree. In the DNA of the acorn that went into that tree was the DNA for apples.
Yeah.
And the DNA of the tree it's looking up to is the DNA of oranges.
Yeah.
If it's producing the best, juiciest, most ripe, healthiest, most nutritious apples ever, it's still going to be unhappy because it's trying to be like the orange tree, but that was never in its DNA.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some skills or things that I can learn from you, even though you're better placed to do them than I am and vice versa, whatever. But generally speaking, what am I meant to be doing in this life? What are you meant to be doing in this life? You've got a DNA, and if you and any of the listeners, if anyone has the propensity to believe that we are more than just our physical body, whatever that means to you, then that could be your DNA physically, but it could be the DNA in your soul, your spirit, your energy, whatever you believe. What are you meant to be doing with this life and the skills, the talents, the propensities, whatever that you have? And so while I do believe in our potentiality over time, given the right situation, I know it will look different for everyone. Some people's will be a little bit less, but less doesn't mean less good. It means that's where that person's focus was meant to go, right? There are some people that crack social media like that, for example. And some people that try and try, and they just end up wasting loads of time. And it's not that they're a failure. I'm partly saying this to myself because there are things I really want to get good at, but sometimes we just have to realize, actually, the better plan is to get good at something else that I'm meant to be doing, make money, use that to pay someone else who's meant to be doing that other thing instead. That's business, right? But that's, for me, that's the why of those business basics that you'll know really well. And so while I do believe in our potential, I don't actually believe in our potential for absolutely anything, period. There are lots of things that us as individuals are meant to be doing. And that isn't a bad thing. That's instead of trying to be the tree that you're not, be more of the tree that you are. And this is a comparison mindset conversation kind of.
I love that.
That's my perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's definitely answered my initial my question, and like learned a lot from that, because I do think it is about, like you said, this pursuit of the journey. Part of that is where am I supposed to be putting my energy? Like, well, and you can get that, like you said, from help, but understanding that. And then I don't think there is enough of a realization, or there's enough rhetoric out there about this is your capacity now, not your potential. I think that's super, super important. I think most people think their capacity today, especially when they're having difficult times and maybe not as far along in their goals or their dreams or whatever it might be, they believe that's their capacity today.
Forever. The brain isn't very good at projecting into the future. Right? Well, how do I say this? We think in the future a lot. We don't project accurately into the future, which is kind of awkward. So it's like, I'm anxious because of stuff in the future, or I have these dreams about the future. But I also assume, there's a part of my brain that assumes everything is always going to be the way it is now. Including myself and my ability. And therefore, it's really tough for us to appreciate, actually, I might be a totally different person in 5 years, even 1 year.
Exactly.
And so in this equation now, so there's a bit I've added to the end of this process, which is from what you were describing, that I would probably call discernment. The ability to discern what's right for you, what's not. Should I go down the easy path? Because actually, I don't always need to do the hard thing, right? Because I actually agree. I think there's a zeitgeist online. There's a section of the internet that's like, always do the hard thing. It's very like hustle bro culture. And actually, discernment is what you use to decide, hey, what's the best decision actually right now.
Exactly.
I've got something I call the discernment scale. Which is essentially a measurement of high agency and low agency. Are you familiar with the high agency, low agency concept? So you need to read this essay. It's been picked up by, I think, like Stephen Bartlett's publishing company, so that the author is the guy who wrote a really long essay on a private webpage. But he's really well connected, has a really big following. So this has gone everywhere. And it's basically high agency, someone who makes shit happen themselves. Which is another way of describing our kind of high internal locus of control thing. Conversation here. And so I see discernment on this kind of horseshoe scale, a bit like the political spectrum, you might say. So imagine a normal linear scale. One extreme end is I do not listen to other people ever, period. The other extreme end is I only ever do what anyone else ever says.
Good.
And in the middle is the middle of those two things. I listen to myself and I listen to others. And then that becomes a horseshoe scale where at the very top of that, the highest level of discernment, I'm listening to others and to myself, and not taking either one too seriously, too much like gospel. I don't have the arrogance of only ever doing what I want to do. I don't have the kind of passiveness or sheepishness of only ever doing what other people tell me I'm going to do. And that's my ability to discern what is actually right for me now. And it feels like that's what you're kind of describing.
I think that's exactly it. And I'm really interested, and I don't know, I'm on that journey right now, but how do you do that? Do you know what I mean? So for example, one practical thing that I do is I choose to speak to certain people about certain things. So if I'm getting advice from someone around my business goals, I'll be thinking, okay, let me speak to someone who is maybe not too far ahead, but has gone through something, meaning that I'm something similar, meaning I'm more likely to take that on and listen and decide, but still have the power in myself to say, I respect where they've been and what they've done, but it's not for me either ever or right now. And I think that is key. I'm just so interested in all these, like, the practical ways of gaining these, like, courage, resilience, confidence, discernment, all of these things. It's so interesting. And I was gonna say that another thing is this whole mind-body piece, like the idea of know your mind, know your body. So this pursuit of knowing yourself is knowing your mind and your body as well. So, I've been under quite a lot of stress recently. But I am someone who naturally is like, it's fine, it will go away. Do you know what I mean? But like, you got to listen, like I'm learning, you got to listen to your body, because I don't know exactly what the science is around it, but how the body and the brain connect in terms of warnings and things like that. But I think that's a key thing around in this framework or in this journey of, yes, you want to go on the pursuit, you accept you need help, you're going to go on these trials and these journeys to get some of these skills, but along the way, your mind and your body are constantly giving you signals and telling you things, and it is a marathon, not a sprint, like in the old adage. And again, I'm learning to take that significantly more seriously as a leader of people as well. Like I have a team, small team, but I can only do my part and they can only do their parts if we all listen to our mind and our bodies in that way. Do you think is something seems obvious, but when you're in the day to day and you're doing it all and you're trying to raise this money or you're trying to get this customer, you forget that actually you might just need to sleep. You might just need to go to sleep.
It sounds like you're describing a little bit something like Alain de Botton's School of Life. Are you familiar with Alain de Botton?
No.
So he runs something called the School of Life.
Okay.
It's been around for ages now.
I think I know the School of Life, just not the person, but yeah.
So I think him and maybe as a co-founder, but I mean, they'll talk about a lot of like what I will call like these nonlinear skills, right? So I don't know, that's a terrible word for it. It's just what I've been using recently, but these character skills, which is soft, quote unquote, soft skills, but also what you're describing is like the ability to listen, but not just to other people, listening to yourself.
Correct.
Which usually the internal is easier because we know it, but when it comes to listening, it actually should be more tough. Yeah. If you say something at me, I can just pick it up.
Yeah.
But I need to cease whatever is going on now, ask myself a question, listen and interpret the answer, and that's really, really tough. What else do you think you would teach if you were to teach me, if I was a student of this kind of School of Life? What do you think I would need to know?
I mean, a lot of the things we talked about, but I think, for example, a good one is what do you believe about the world? So you kind of mentioned it with regards to people who might think of things outside the material. And I think giving people the suite of, teaching people the suite of things that at least we know are out there that could help them on their journey. So whether that is, the traditional religions, or whether that is, I think, closer to where I'm at now, which is like energy and like exchange and how like laws and vibration and cause and effect and all these things, like that's a model that might speak to people more versus the other models, maybe not. But I think there's teaching people that there is a world outside the material, at least giving them the option to explore that there is a world outside the material, but it doesn't have to be what you've seen and learned in the traditional way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I call us spiritual generalists.
Okay.
People who aren't attached to any one like religion, but can learn lots of different things from lots of different sources.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love, like, the word energy is a really key word for me. this is interesting how this will age, because I'm crafting a lot of some of the work I do in my personal brand around energy, understanding energy. A lot of us have heard of like mental fitness, emotional fitness, energetic fitness, is what I'm super interested in. So, I mean, I love this. Practically, how do we do that? Like, I know we talk, like there's, someone has to be interested in that, and people will have their belief systems. Actually, what I'm finding is there are a lot of spiritual generalists who are also of a certain religion or whatever, which is really cool. But I know we were talking off camera about, creating real value in the world. So that's a kind of external, physical thing. Now you're describing as kind of very internal, all lots of internal things. What are, if you had to give me like a list of the most important components and then how they work together, why they're important, what would that list be?
List of components of
what this school of life is.
Okay, so definitely identification, like self-identification, that whole journey that we've talked about. Definitely what I would call having a personal manifesto. So like we talk about it sometimes in business and stuff like, or your mission and things like that. But this idea of a personal manifesto, which can, as most things, change over time. But in this school, I would put a lot of focus on, as you're going through this journey, what is this manifesto? What is it internally? What is it externally? Who do you want to impact, if anyone? How do you want to do it? How do you want to move through life, basically? And like anchoring it somewhere, but recognizing that it will change. I think also things that are more, would seem boring or maybe rudimentary, but like deciding if like, are you the planner? Someone who wants to have a plan, and how deep do you want to go into that plan? Do you want it to be meticulous? Do you want it to be milestone based, whatever? But recognizing that there's no right way to do it, but it has to again be aligned with you. If you want a plan, great. If you want to move through life and vibe it, also cool, but understanding what the benefits are of all those ways of doing things. So I think that would be an important part. Also, communication. Again, the way that we learn communication in business is very different to how I think in this school idea that you would think about communication. Like I read a book called Nonviolent Communication. And it's like, when you think about the title, you think it's about, don't scream, don't shout, etc., which is part of it. But it's really about, why do we communicate as people? What's the point? Why do we have mouths?
That's a really good point. Yeah. As soon as you say that, I'm like, it's so that we don't have to use our fists. See.
So it's exactly that. And it's, how do you speak to people, but how do you want to speak to people, and how do you want to receive information for the things that you want to do in the world and life as well? So I think just the idea of communication and doing it in a productive way, and recognizing, I was in a situation just yesterday where there are some people you cannot communicate with in the way that you would like to communicate.
And I know it's right. I was in a situation like that a few weeks ago, and I started literally doing research and like, how do you deal with people? Like if someone comes up to you drunk, like you just can't speak to them, aggressive and drunk. Exactly. I was like, what do I do? Like I can't like talk to you like I would, which is normally my default. What do I do?
Exactly. Things like that. So I think it's recognizing the different situations, but also your own communication style, partly natural, partly honed. But then if you're faced with these scenarios that are unusual, how do you stay true to yourself in that and get what you need and society needs out of it as well? That's another thing, the communication side. I also just think like, I don't know how to frame it in terms of a practical learning or teaching, but how do you, sharing with people how to actually take the experiences of other people and align it to yourself. So like, we're good at hearing, we're not great at listening, I would say, or like generally as a people.
Yeah.
So like, how do we, like, well, there's this extra filter that before it goes into the ear, there's a filter of like, how does that information need to be received so that I get it in the way that is most helpful? And I don't really know what that looks like, but I think it's just going beyond someone gives you advice and you take it or you don't. I think there's a million things that happen in between that could be useful, especially as people in leadership positions, to, if an employee is sharing something, like how do you think about your bias? Maybe put that to the side. Think about the goals of what you're trying to do, put that to the side. Think about the human emotion of that individual. How do you do all that at the same time, show empathy, and actually make decisions that actually move things further as well? So yeah, I haven't worked it all out, to be honest, but I think this conversation has helped a lot in just terms of like, knowing what I want to do in the future, how making it super practical, like really, really practical.
I mean, and none of that surprises me because you're a serial entrepreneur. How much of that, what many people would consider strange and weird, entrepreneurial journey has informed some of these things you're interested in now, right? Everything from, I'm assuming, teaching you to question your assumptions to the practicality you just mentioned. Then you've also got this internal part, which is directly relevant, but actually one could argue also very different. So, I mean, how has that journey shaped everything you talked about so far?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in multiple ways. I think one of the fundamental ways is, as you mentioned, the assumptions part. I assumed the trajectory of starting something for the first time would look like, and being vastly wrong, just like on almost every front, just being totally wrong. Like
Very classic story.
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually going through, I think they call it the dip. I think there's a book about it. There's, you're 6 months in, you think you're supposed to be, growing at a crazy pace, and actually no one's buying anything. Like you literally don't have one customer. And that kind of realization and going through that emotional journey of not being the success that you thought you were going to be, but deciding to push on. Like this, I feel like it's an inflection point for a lot of people. It's, this isn't for me, I'm going to stop. Or it's, I just haven't learnt how to do this yet, I'm going to continue. So I think definitely that part fundamentally is just the failing of the first business. I think one other thing that's informed me about this stuff is raising investment. This is my third business. In the process of raising investment for that, raised it for the other two businesses, and learning again, like you're taught like in school, this is how you do a pitch deck. This is how you do X. This is how you do Y. And you get into it and you're like, actually, my experience at least has been, don't forget you're speaking to a person. And don't forget, like, they need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And getting obsessed with like, oh, it's me versus another business and my metrics are better, therefore they're going to fund me instead of them. And like that just not being true. And I think that part as well has molded this idea of forming your own way, but also like, no is not the end, like it's part of the process as well. And then I think finally, just, you still have it, like entrepreneurship is not my life. Like my life is made up of multiple things. Like it's a clear driver and a passion, but I still care about spending time with my friends and learning. And I still care about, going to the cinema and like having a good time or having downtime. And like life is a bunch of components, and not letting it take my whole identity. Because I think you get into these difficult parts where these things become your whole identity. And when things don't go well, that's when difficult times happen. But when you've got these other amazing things, it's super powerful. So I think that's really helped for how I navigate things as well.
Life is not a tick box exercise.
Exactly.
Right? But we are taught like it is. When you're in school, you're taught like it is.
Yeah.
When I work with entrepreneurs who want to raise money, so often I find, like, for example, I've had a number of people I've worked with where they've gone through an accelerator that's given them money and invested, right? So, which are therefore investors.
Yeah.
And their pitch decks will be a bunch of tick box exercises, not them understanding what the investor's actually looking for, both as a person and as a business.
Correct.
So the investor mindset isn't there. And I'm like, they invested money in you, but didn't teach you this? What is it? But what they taught them is, here's the slides that need to go on the pitch deck.
Correct.
But like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
And because they don't understand the why, they can't reverse engineer what they need to say, who they need to be, and all these other things. And so when we talk about this like school of life-esque stuff, what we're talking about is the why, and then the how that stems from the why, not just the like what.
Exactly. And with that pitch deck example as well, it's like people forget that PowerPoint didn't always exist, but people did raise money before.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
You know, like Canva wasn't always there to do these things, you know? So sometimes I try and take it back to those principles of like, if I was just knocking on the door of someone and trying to explain what I'm trying to do, I wouldn't pull out a tablet and pull out some slides. I would speak to them. Hence that communication part as well. So yeah, I think there's, I mean, I'm sure there's more to unpack, but I think entrepreneurship has been instrumental to my resilience journey. I'm so grateful and thankful that I made some of the decisions that I made. I'm glad my first business failed. I'm actually glad it did. I'm glad that I have people around me that understand the difficulties of it and the power that I get from them as well. But most importantly, I think it's really about, I do believe this is the thing I'm supposed to do, which makes the hard times easier as well. Like it's a natural thing. And I think it's because of this self-discovery work that I tried to do earlier on, that made it easier. Yeah.
I think we could go on forever and ever. I think you're right. There is so much, but we can't. Fortunately, don't have time right now. Dude, this has been really, really cool. I really appreciate how much this conversation has felt so free-flowing and open, and this has probably been one of my favorites so far, because I actually just loved where this has gone into, this mix of really practical stuff and the internal work, the philosophical parts. I love it all. So thank you so much for everything you bring, everything you do, everything you are. I really appreciate you. And I've got a closing question for you that I ask everyone who comes on the show. Cool. The show is called Lost and Searching. And so I'd love to know, for you right now, what is the number one question that you are still searching for the answer to?
I think the number one question I'm still searching for the answer to is, why do I have this fear of not reaching my potential? That's the number one question that I'm trying to answer. Like, where is it coming from? And how important is the answer to that question in itself? Like, is it an artificial driver to allow me to do what I need to do? Or is it actually a false narrative? And it's not really that, it's something else. So
what are you leaning towards right now? What do you think so far that it might be?
I'm leaning towards the fact that it's slightly false, because growing up, you know, my parents were the ones who were like, you got straight A's and a B, oh, you got a B. And am I just dealing with that like throughout my life? So I think it might be close to the false narrative, but I can't complain that it's allowed me to achieve some great things so far. I just want to understand it a bit better and hone it.
Yeah, there's something I'm going to give you when we're done recording, which is called the positive intelligence framework. Have you heard of this before? It's the idea that we have sabotaging voices that can exist within us. So there are 9 saboteurs, and one of them is, don't fix this thing because it's what's allowed you to be successful.
Yeah.
But it comes from what in another framework we call catabolic energy, which is your essentially destructive energy, that survival mode energy, we might say from earlier. That's my counter to what you just said. If you wanted to hang on to that unhelpful voice that you think is helpful, is what if you could achieve all that and more without any of the negative feelings? Then you would have all the positives and none of those negative consequences. But that is work over time, like you said, anyway. But I just want to say that, like, what you've described, I think, is the case for a lot of us. And a lot of us don't ask ourselves the question you're asking. A lot of us have that. So you're definitely not alone in that. But like you said, step number one is awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I'm excited to see where you come from it.
Amazing.
Dude, look, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really, really cool. I appreciate you.
Awesome. You too. It's been amazing. Love it.
Well, look at you making it to the end of the episode. Welcome. There's a lot more for you to do. If you're still here, there's a full playlist on YouTube down below. There's a recommended video probably somewhere around the screen or down below, and so much more. Give us a follow, help share if you're here. Hey, maybe you enjoyed it. And look, this show only grows with your help. So again, I know you're probably bored of hearing it, but it would mean the world to me if you helped us out and paid it forward and shared it around. And hey, you never know how this will help someone else. So thank you so much for being here, for being a part of it. Lots of love, and here is to your success. See you soon.